My last mind coaching video was all about self-sabotage and why most of the time it isn't actually sabotage at all, but a part of our mind simply disagreeing with our chosen route towards happiness. Your mind isn't trying to sink the ship, it just wants to sail in a different direction. In this video, I want to talk about those slightly less common but no less debilitating instances when our mind starts to actively restrict our happiness, not for safety, but because a part of us believes we simply don't deserve it. Those times when we genuinely have a saboteur aboard our ship. I'm Tim Box, Mind Coach, and this is Everything You Need to Know About Self-Sabotage, Part 2, this time it's personal. So the first thing to say is if you haven't seen last week's video on self-sabotage, then I advise checking that out first, as it explains the way we view the mind and the motivating factors behind our emotional responses. But if you can't be bothered to do that, then all you really need to know for this second part is that when it comes to sailing the ship of our mind, it's our subconscious, or the crew of that ship, that's in charge of how we feel from moment to moment. We might consciously want to think, feel, or respond in a certain way, but it's the crew that effectively have their hands on all the things that steer and sail the ship. What we're always trying to do is to get our subconscious responses aligned with our conscious goals, or to put it another way, get the captain and the crew communicating well and working together. So, why do we experience those times when it seems like a member of the crew has gone rogue, not just disagreeing with the course we've set, but seemingly trying to scupper any attempts we make towards happiness? And in those instances, what on earth can we do about that? Well, in my experience of working with clients over the last 10 years, there are a couple of things that cause a part of our mind to start to play antagonist or saboteur aboard our ship. The first of these is guilt. When we've done something in the past that we perceive to be wrong and that maybe hurt the people around us, then sometimes we carry around such guilt for that action that our mind starts to actively limit our happiness. As we move towards our goals, we find a part of us resisting the actions we need to take, or causing certain behaviours in us that we know will sabotage our efforts. And it's doing this because in some way, as a result of what we've done, we now just don't deserve to be happy. However, in these instances, it can be of value to question by whose rules we're judging our actions. Very often we carry guilt not because our actions were wrong, but because others didn't approve of them in some way. I'll often see clients who carry guilt over career or relationship choices they made that went against the wishes of their parents, or things they did for their own happiness that for some unforeseen reason upset their friends or siblings. A lot of the time, the guilt we carry around isn't because we did something bad, but because others took our actions in a negative way and now we feel like we're bad. Being a good person is, generally speaking, quite important to the average human being. We need to feel like the protagonist of our story rather than the antagonist, the hero as opposed to the villain. When someone whose opinion we value and whose feelings we care about paints us in a different light, that can feel incredibly uncomfortable and cause parts of our subconscious to react as if we no longer deserve a free run towards our own happiness. But always remember that these rules by which we hold ourselves to task might not be ours. They might not even be rules we agree with. We don't seek to upset the people around us, but when our values are slightly different to theirs, then our pursuit of happiness won't always meet with their agreement or their approval. You can't keep everyone happy because ultimately the happiness of others isn't your responsibility, it's theirs. Restricting your happiness won't help others find theirs. That's after all their puzzle to solve, not yours. Another thing worth mentioning here, every emotion we feel has a purpose. In the same way that fear is designed to make us move away from danger, and anger is designed to have us taking action to right any wrong done to us, guilt is there to prevent us from repeating mistakes. Our crew are pretty good at avoiding the things that might cause us unhappiness. That's why we so readily are able to feel fear and anxiety in threatening situations. But we tend to learn about not hurting others a bit later on. We've done things that caused others distress many times in our life, but probably didn't always notice it because there's nothing inbuilt inside us to register pain in others. A lot of the time, they have to tell us about it for us to realize. Then our levels of empathy and care increase as we learn the damage that we can cause others when we act without consideration. But if our mind decides to put us in a never-ending prison of guilt over the things we've done wrong, then it's kind of missed the point. Prison isn't there solely to punish people for their actions, its function is to rehabilitate. People commit what society deems to be crimes, and the system in place decides how long we need to keep that person away from society before they learn not to do that anymore. That's why we have parole hearings. If we feel they've learnt their lesson, we let them out sooner. In that same way, guilt isn't designed to punish us and make our life less than it could be. It's there so we learn the lessons required and move forward a better version of ourselves. Resist the temptation of condemning yourself to a life sentence. If you've learnt not to repeat that mistake, that part of your mind has achieved its goal and you've learnt the lesson. A lesson you're probably unlikely to forget. It's not actually the sting of guilt that keeps you on track. It's your desire to be a good person and do the right thing with the information you now have. Perhaps the final thing to say about self-sabotage caused by guilt, we don't get to decide when we learn our important lessons in life. We've probably all at one time looked back on a past era of judgment and said, if I could go back, I'd do it different this time. But of course you wouldn't. Because if you went back, you'd be the same person, knowing the same things you knew then, with the same level of inexperience, and still doing your best, exactly as you were at the time. You only think you'd do it differently now because that experience taught you a valuable lesson. You needed to go through that to learn that lesson. You can't go back and do it again, but you can take that lesson and know if a similar situation arose in the future, you'd do it differently next time. We all go through life learning lessons and growing emotionally from day to day, but when we might encounter an experience that teaches us something valuable, we don't get to decide that. We're not in control of what life will choose to throw at us today. We are only in control of our responses. If we choose to treat each mistake and failure as a point of learning, then we've no need to carry around guilt because we were doing our best then, and due to that experience, our best just got a little bit better as we learnt something new. We've made many mistakes in our life and we're going to make many more. Yes, we hope most of them only impact ourselves and not others, but in those unfortunate times when they do, our job is not to create a part of our mind that now feels the need to punish us for being a bad person. Our job is to learn what we needed to learn and make sure our crew keeps sailing us towards happiness. This leads me on neatly to the other reason why we might inadvertently create a saboteur aboard our ship. And that's self-castigation. When we go through something bad, maybe an early trauma, our mind has the job of working out what caused that to happen, and having worked that out, how do we avoid it in the future? Our subconscious needs to come up with an emotional strategy to help move us forward, knowing what we have now learned from that particular experience. However, in the case of any trauma where we were unfortunately placed in the role of victim, we very probably did nothing to deserve it and could do nothing to stop it. It just happened to us, either by the will of others or just random chance. But of course, in this life where we value feeling in control, our mind might decide that if we can in some way take the blame for this thing happening, then we can at least be in charge of whether or not it happens in the future. If we can believe we caused it, then we can believe we have agency moving forward and we'll be able to take action to not cause it and avoid it from now on. In these instances, a part of your mind or a member of your crew will get the blame for either making it happen or not doing enough to stop it happening. This can give rise to self-castigation and self-hatred, and may well lead to a member of your crew being rejected and treated like the bad guy. At this point, it starts to get a bit like kids playing in a playground. One kid gets kicked out of the game for doing something wrong and is left with the only option of throwing stones and hurling abuse to try and disrupt the game. That kid doesn't actually want the game to stop. He just wants to be part of it again, because ultimately he didn't deserve to get thrown out. The number of times I'll deal with clients who have created this antagonist or saboteur part of their mind simply by blaming themselves for past events they had no control over and mercilessly beating themselves up about it. This is the main reason why you'll hear me say in so many of my videos that we need to be kind to our own mind. We need to embrace the parts that we've been harsh to and accept that all of our crew are doing their best at all times, but it will be unfair to expect them to know everything about every situation. We're all on a journey here and furiously trying to learn what we need to know as we go, but it's always a work in progress, and we do better celebrating the times we learn something new rather than beating ourselves up for not knowing it already. In my experience, the antidote to genuine self-sabotage is self-love and self-care. It's about accepting our limitations, forgiving ourselves for past mistakes, and realizing that we're all learning as we go. So, what are your thoughts? Does this idea resonate with you? Let me know in the comments. What can you do differently to let your crew know that you care about them and appreciate their efforts? Let's turn those saboteurs back into valued crew members and get the ship sailing again. Guys, I hope you've got something from this video. If you have, then please hit the like button, and why not subscribe for more content just like this. Every Monday, I put up these mind coaching tips, and every Thursday is the latest episode of Clear Your Head, which is all about helping you get control of anxiety. But that's it for now. I'm Tim Box, Mind Coach. Always remember to be kind to your mind, and I'll see you next time.